When I headed to the restaurant for the social gathering, I saw a familiar coworker standing alone outside. She was soaking wet in the rain without an umbrella. "What's wrong? Let's head inside." I spoke to her, but she looked like she was about to cry and didn't move.
They said anyone with just a high school diploma, just go home.
She muttered softly. I couldn't say anything, and Emily spoke to me.
I've endured and worked so hard all this time. But in the end, I'm always looked down on because of my education.
Emily lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. She must have been carrying this burden for a long time. There's no way I could leave her like this. I spoke gently to her. Can you wait here for a minute? It won't take long. Then I handed Emily my umbrella and handkerchief. I opened the door to the restaurant. Since the place was reserved, the employees of Trinity Bank were making a lot of noise inside. Then I found the person I was looking for and declared firmly, "I'm closing an account worth $20 billion. I'm Steve Haynes. I turned 55 this year and have lived my life prioritizing my career. Thanks to that, I'm still single at this age. I only have a high school diploma. My father passed away when I was very young. My mother raised me alone, working hard just to make ends meet. There was no way I could tell her I wanted to go to college. With that in mind, I graduated from high school and immediately got a job at Trinity Bank. I worked there as a banker for years until I left in my 30s. With only a high school education, I couldn't compete with college graduates. Our assignments and responsibilities were completely different, and I decided that rather than staying at the bank, I'd gain a specialized skill and work my way up. So I resolved to turn things around and studied hard to become a certified tax accountant. Now I run my own private tax office. Even though I left Trinity Bank, I didn't completely sever ties with them. Trinity Bank often hosts seminars on estate tax planning at its branches, and I'm frequently invited as an external speaker. The branch where I'm most often asked to give these seminars is Trinity Bank's first branch. It's located relatively close to the city center and primarily serves corporate clients and wealthy individuals. For a major bank like Trinity, it's common to have several tax consultants like me on call. However, I'm the only one conducting seminars at the first branch. There's a specific reason for this, but because of it, I've built a close relationship with the staff at the first branch. As a tax consultant, I plan to maintain a good working relationship with Trinity Bank moving forward. That's what I thought. However, a turning point came my way. It was the reassignment of the assistant branch manager, who I've always relied on. I frequently coordinated with this assistant branch manager regarding seminars. I've met the branch manager a few times, but he's often away on business trips and rarely present. As a result, the assistant branch manager had been working hard as the de facto acting manager of the first branch. Trinity Bank conducts regular staff rotations, but the current assistant branch manager had been at the first branch ever since I began giving seminars there. He must have been at the first branch for at least 10 years. The assistant branch manager was someone who paid attention to every detail and would subtly step in to help if anything went wrong during a seminar. So I was honestly a bit sad about his transfer, but I was also hopeful about the new assistant branch manager. 2 weeks later, I headed to the first branch. I'd heard from the former assistant branch manager over the phone that the new one had officially arrived. When the automatic doors of the branch opened, I saw a familiar face. Hello, Emily.
Steve, welcome.
When our eyes met, Emily greeted me with a bright smile. Emily was a newcomer who had joined the bank 6 months ago and worked as a lobby assistant. Her primary role was to greet customers, help with reception, and support their transactions. At Trinity Bank, new female employees typically start in the lobby assistant role and gradually learn the different aspects of their job over time. I heard that Emily joined Trinity Bank right after graduating from high school. This was because she had no parents and lived only with her elderly grandparents. To support them on their modest pension, she chose to enter the workforce instead of continuing her education. Emily is a fresh-faced, charming young woman. Since I'm also a high school graduate, I felt a sense of kinship with her because we share the same educational background. Seeing her always working hard with a bright smile reminded me to return to my roots and give my work my best effort too. Recalling these things, I spoke to Emily. The new assistant branch manager transferred in last week, right? I'd like to introduce myself. Can you call him over for me? The previous assistant branch manager had already informed him that I would be visiting today. Since there wasn't a specific time set, I decided to visit during business hours. However, Emily's expression clouded over.
The assistant branch manager, Michael Keller, right? Could you wait just a moment?
She looked visibly nervous, almost as though she was afraid of something. I couldn't help but ask her what was wrong. Oh, sorry about that. Did I catch you at a bad time? If so, I can come back later. The new assistant branch manager had just transferred in, so if he was busy, it couldn't be helped. When I said that, Emily hurriedly responded.
No. I'll go check right now.
With that, Emily quickly disappeared into the back office. 15 minutes later, Emily returned with a man in tow. The man's expression was clearly unpleasant.
You're the tax consultant who's been running our seminars, right? I'm busy, so I'd appreciate it if you could keep this brief.
I glanced at his name tag. It read Michael Keller. So this must be the new assistant branch manager. However, this kind of rude attitude right off the bat was unbelievable. It's not normal for someone to speak so bluntly to an external consultant like me. I gave a wry smile and replied, "No, I just stopped by to introduce myself. I look forward to working with you."
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm busy, so.
Michael said only that, then turned on his heel and went back into the office.
Oh, Michael, assistant branch manager.
Emily hurried after Michael, but what he said next was shocking.
Don't call me unless it's urgent. This is why I can't stand high school graduates, because they can't make quick decisions.
I'm so sorry.
Seeing Emily apologize to Michael with a pale face, I felt genuinely sorry for her. If I hadn't asked her to call him, she wouldn't have been scolded so unfairly by Michael. However, the former assistant branch manager must have informed Michael about my visit. The former assistant was a diligent person, so there's no way there was a communication error. Feeling uneasy about the situation, I silently promised myself that I'd find a way to make it up to Emily someday. Some time passed, and I found myself back at the first branch again. It was the day of a seminar that I was scheduled to lead. Since the seminar had already been arranged with a former assistant branch manager, everything went smoothly. However, I hadn't had any discussions with Michael regarding the seminar scheduled for the following months. Normally, a meeting should be held at least 2 weeks in advance, but I hadn't received any information from Michael. Seminars aren't something that can be thrown together at the last minute. The specific themes were always provided by the bank. Based on that, I'd prepare materials for the participants and decide on what I'd talk about. So if I wasn't informed ahead of time, I wouldn't be able to get everything done in time. The seminar attendees were all wealthy individuals, and their main concern was how to pass their assets to their spouses or children without incurring heavy taxes. That's why I always spent a lot of time, even in between my main work, carefully preparing the seminar materials. As I was about to head home after the seminar, Emily approached me with a bright smile.
Steve, great job today. The seminar was so informative.
Thank you, Emily, for all your support. At each seminar, female staff members would help distribute materials to the attendees, serve refreshments, and provide overall support. When the previous assistant branch manager was in charge, he would often stand at the back of the room to handle any challenging participants. However, the basic support duties were always carried out by the female staff. Ever since Emily started working at the first branch, she's always played a key support role during my seminars. Once again, Emily was subtly stepping in to support the participants. As we were chatting pleasantly, a slow, dry clap echoed from behind us. Oh, Michael! When I turned around, I saw Michael standing by the seminar room door.
Wow, what an amazing seminar.
Michael exaggeratedly praised the seminar in a loud voice. But I knew he hadn't attended even a minute of it. I had glanced around the room several times, so there was no mistake. As I wondered what he was trying to pull, Michael continued.
It's such a fantastic seminar, and yet, it's a shame that this is the last one.
What? I was stunned by what I just heard, unable to process his words. Emily, equally taken aback, asked Michael.
What do you mean by last? Steve has been hosting seminars exclusively for the first branch all this time.
Her face clearly showed confusion and sadness. Michael clicked his tongue in annoyance.
A high school graduate questioning me. Huh? Whatever. From now on, another tax consultant will be handling the seminars.
Why the sudden change? When I asked, Michael smirked and curled his lips into a grin.
There's a consultant I've got connections with from my previous branch. It's easier for me to work with him. So, you're out of the picture.
With a loud, mocking laugh, Michael walked away.
That's way too disrespectful to Steve. The first branch has been benefiting from his expertise for so long.
Emily murmured quietly, voicing exactly what I was feeling. The first branch had always valued me, and in return, I had prioritized working with them. However, I couldn't help but think that this relationship might be coming to an end. When I was openly showing my distrust toward Michael, I received a call from Michael at my office. When I answered, it was an invitation to a social gathering hosted by the first branch.
You've done a lot for us after all. So I figured I'd invite you as a farewell gesture. Of course, Your replacement, the new tax consultant, will be there too. He's a smart guy, so I bet you'll end up making a fool of yourself.
Michael laughed loudly, taunting me over the phone. Normally, I wouldn't even want to attend something like that, but I had a long-standing relationship with the first branch. All right, I'll attend. I reluctantly agreed. Then came the day of the social gathering. As I headed to the restaurant, I noticed a familiar bank staff member standing alone outside. She looked somewhat downcast. She was soaking wet in the rain without an umbrella. Emily! I hurried over to her in a rush.
Steve,
Emily looked at me and murmured softly, "What's wrong? Let's head inside." I urged her, but she didn't move, her expression on the verge of tears. But if she stayed like this, she was bound to catch a cold. Noticing my concern, Emily finally spoke.
Michael, the assistant branch manager, told me that high school graduates aren't welcome. He said the social gathering is only for those with a college degree or higher.
Emily muttered quietly, "That's awful." I was at a loss for words as memories of Michael's behavior came flooding back. A single tear slid down Emily's cheek as she continued.
He even said something about you. He said a high school educated tax consultant is unreliable. He bragged that the tax consultant with a master's degree from his previous branch is far superior. I thought you might face the same treatment if you went inside, so I stayed here to warn you.
I was speechless at what Emily had just shared. I had always been bothered by Michael's attitude, but I never imagined he looked down on me this much. Seeing Emily standing in the rain, waiting for me all this time, filled me with guilt. Emily spoke, breaking the silence I couldn't.
I've been holding it in and working hard all this time. But in the end, I'm always looked down on because of my education.
She lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. She must have been through so much pain. There was no way I could just leave her like this. Besides, I didn't want to walk away from the first branch after everything, letting Michael have the last word. I quickly sent an email to a certain someone. Then, I spoke to Emily. "Can you wait here for a minute? This won't take long." I handed her my umbrella and handkerchief.
But
Emily looked confused and tried to stop me. She was probably worried because I'm just a consultant hired by the bank. Michael, as the assistant branch manager, held the second highest authority at the first branch, just below the branch manager. But I didn't need that kind of worry. I brushed off Emily's attempt to stop me and pushed the door open. Since the restaurant was reserved, Trinity Bank employees were inside, laughing, drinking, and having a great time. I looked around, but the branch manager was nowhere in sight. "Hey, Michael." I found the person I was looking for and declared firmly, "I'm closing an account worth $20 billion. Michael burst out laughing at my words.
What the heck are you talking about?
And it seemed that she had heard what I said. Emily, looking flustered, rushed into the restaurant.
Steve, what's going on?
Well? The amount must have sounded absurd to her. It was an unimaginable figure, and she was visibly shaken. However, Michael showed no reaction at all. He was laughing so hard that he was holding his stomach.
My stomach hurts from laughing so much. And $20 billion? That's a pretty bold move, Mr. Consultant. But I know the truth. You're just a high school educated tax consultant.
Michael shouted triumphantly, pointing a finger at me. Then he began praising the man standing next to him.
This tax consultant right here is a master's graduate. He's in a whole different league compared to some shady, unqualified consultant.
The tax consultant next to Michael appeared to be around my age. When he saw my face, he froze for a moment, looking startled, before his expression turned awkward. It seemed he had realized who I was right away. Shady, huh? It looks like the tax consultant next to you knows exactly who I am. I chuckled and glanced toward the man. His face was visibly tense. But Michael didn't notice the change in his demeanor.
A high school graduate tax consultant is a rare breed, isn't it? Probably famous in the industry for that reason alone. I mean, you can't even take the exam without a college degree, right? I wonder how much money you had to throw around to make that happen.
Michael laughed as if he was thoroughly enjoying himself. Meanwhile, the consultant beside him was growing increasingly pale. I straightened my posture and firmly addressed Michael. I did pass the certification exam properly, you know? The truth is, you don't need a college degree to take the tax consultant exam. I had gained plenty of experience during my time at Trinity Bank, so I met the eligibility requirements. Then I added, I've also published several books and frequently serve as a speaker for tax consultant seminars. I'd say I'm more knowledgeable than your average consultant.
What? A high school graduate?
Michael stared at me, dumbfounded. At that moment, the tax consultant standing next to Michael timidly spoke up in my defense.
Michael, that comment was really out of line. Steve often appears in tax industry publications. He's a very well-known expert in this field.
What? Is that true?
Michael's composure cracked as he turned to the consultant.
I earned my registration by having some exam sections waived because of my master's degree. But Steve, as a high school graduate, passed all 5 sections of the exam on his own. He's not lacking in intelligence.
All 5 sections.
Michael's face turned pale in an instant. The person he had looked down on so much had passed a notoriously difficult certification through the official process. It was no wonder he was shaken. Michael, you seem obsessed with academic credentials, but people are more than just their education. I told him that directly.
You should apologize to Steve, don't you think? Honestly, his seminars are far more valuable than mine. His explanations of tax reforms are always spot on. I wouldn't be surprised if some attendees come specifically to hear him speak.
The tax consultant spoke to Michael, clearly worried. For the seminar attendees, someone who not only kept up with the latest tax regulations, but had also authored multiple books would naturally be more trustworthy than just a consultant with a master's degree. Michael fell silent for a moment before he began to pout like a child.
I didn't hear anything about that from the previous assistant branch manager. And isn't it irresponsible not to explain your background properly?
Saying that, Michael tried to shift the blame onto me. He was clearly desperate to avoid taking the blame himself. Michael stubbornly refused to apologize. Just as I was thinking I didn't want to waste any more time dealing with him, someone arrived. The restaurant door opened and the branch manager stepped inside, glaring directly at Michael.
Michael, it looks like you've been doing whatever you please, haven't you?
Branch manager, well, I can explain.
Michael was visibly shaken, stumbling over his words. The branch manager shot him a cold remark.
Explain. Steve is a major client with assets worth $20 billion and a renowned tax consultant who has been hosting our seminars. Treating someone like that so poorly is utterly unacceptable.
Well, I,
Michael was at a complete loss for his words. Ignoring Michael, the branch manager turned to me and said,
Steve, I sincerely apologize for the unacceptable behavior of our assistant branch manager.
Michael's face twisted in shock as he watched the branch manager apologize.
branch manager, you're apologizing to a high school graduate? That's too much.
Even now, Michael couldn't stop his elitist remarks.
Michael, I believe that kind of comment is highly inappropriate.
Emily instinctively stepped in to defend me. The other bank employees around us were also bewildered by Michael's blatantly inappropriate behavior. They glanced at him with puzzled expressions, whispering among themselves. I had built good relationships with the employees here. They always treated me with respect. Judging by their reactions, they were likely on my side.
A high school graduate thinks they can give me orders. How shameless.
Michael yelled at Emily, his voice booming. Emily's body trembled at his outburst, but she didn't avert her gaze from him. At that moment, the branch manager's furious voice rang out.
Don't you get it yet? If Steve closes his $20 billion account, do you think we can handle that fallout? It would be the biggest scandal in this bank's history.
Well,
Michael's face was filled with unease. Now that he realized the gravity of the $20 billion account closure, fear was creeping in. I let out a small chuckle and said, I'm sure Michael has a brilliant plan in case a high school graduate like me closes my account. After all, he's a college graduate with a very sharp mind.
Is that true, Michael?
The branch manager's question made Michael look even more distressed.
well,
That's only natural. Sure, Michael is an assistant branch manager and probably earns a decent salary. But that doesn't mean he has enough savings to cover $20 billion. I looked at him as he mumbled incoherently, unable to form a response, and said, The reason my office has amassed $20 billion in assets is because of multiple income streams, consulting fees, royalties, and so on. But more importantly, it's because of constant hard work. I've worked hard enough to overcome the fact that I'm a high school graduate. There have been other executives like Michael who look down on me because of my background. But I earned their respect by using my knowledge to propose effective tax-saving strategies for their companies. I kept presenting solutions they didn't even know existed. Naturally, those same executives grew to trust me deeply. But this level of expertise didn't come overnight. I pulled all-nighters studying desperately, and even after opening my office, every day has been filled with studying. Not a single day passed where I didn't study tax law. I've overcome the barriers of education through my own hard work and dedication. Yet Michael still refused to accept it.
you talk about effort. But isn't it because you and Emily failed your college entrance that you're only high school graduates? Compared to college grads, high school grads study way less. No matter what you say, you're losers.
Michael sneered, his lips curling as he hurled his insults. When it came to studying, it was obvious that I had put in far more hours than Michael ever had. That's because I'd sacrificed all my personal time to dedicate myself to learning. Yet Michael only valued the hours spent studying in school.
You're still saying that nonsense.
The branch manager held his head in his hands, clearly exasperated by Michael's remarks. Even the branch manager must have realized that Michael's total study time was far less than mine. So, Michael, you're saying that being a college graduate makes you a winner? That your life is so much better than mine? I asked him point blank. Michael let out a smug snort and, as if it were obvious, replied confidently,
Do you really need to ask if I'm a winner? I graduated from college and became an assistant branch manager at this major institution, Trinity Bank. I'm not like people who can't fit into an organization like you. It's because I experienced group life all the way through college that I can thrive as part of a team.
Michael spoke as if running a private office like mine meant I was an outcast who couldn't function in a structured organization. Without flinching, I calmly asked him right away, "Oh, really? So you're saying all high school graduates are losers? Even if they earn more than you, they're still worthless." Michael replied instantly,
Of course, without a degree, their worth is zero. Actually, it's in the negative compared to college graduates. You're a burden to society. And Emily over there, she's a high school graduate too, which means she's incompetent and incapable of doing a decent job.
That's awful.
Emily gave Michael a scornful look. Her tears had completely dried and her eyes were no longer wet. She had clearly decided that she wouldn't let Michael keep saying whatever he wanted anymore. I looked Michael in the eye and said, "There's no one as capable as Emily. At the seminars, her attention to detail with the participants is remarkable, and she answers any questions she can with care and precision. In fact, she might have more passion for her work than you do, Michael."
Steve,
Emily looked at me with what seemed like admiration in her eyes.
Don't be ridiculous.
Hearing me suggest that Emily was more competent than him seemed to push Michael's frustration to its limit. "So let me ask you again, do you still believe that high school graduates are incompetent?" If this made Michael reconsider, that would be ideal, but I doubted it. His pride in his academic background was unshakable. And just as I expected, Michael gave exactly the answer I predicted.
Of course, high school graduates have no value in society. They're losers, incapable, and useless.
I smirked and glanced toward the branch manager. "Well, you heard him, branch manager."
What?
Michael seemed bewildered that I had turned the conversation toward the branch manager. He stood there slack-jawed, looking utterly ridiculous. The branch manager glared at Michael. Then, after a long sigh, he delivered a bombshell revelation.
My wife is also a high school graduate. So, are you saying that she is a useless loser too, Michael?
Wait. No, I didn't mean.
Michael clearly hadn't expected his boss's wife to be a high school graduate. He was visibly shaken.
That's not what I meant.
He tried to deny it, but his darting eyes gave away his lie. The reason I knew the branch manager's wife was a high school graduate is simple because she was my classmate. Our high school was known for its high academic standards, and most students naturally went on to college. The only ones who chose to enter the workforce after graduation were me and the branch manager's wife. Because of that, we became close during our job searches. Even after we became working professionals, we stayed in touch and exchanged emails from time to time. It was through one of our email exchanges that I found out she had married the branch manager. I was genuinely surprised. I never in my wildest dreams did I think she would marry the branch manager of the very bank branch where I used to work. Since then, the three of us, the branch manager, his wife, and I, had developed a close friendship. Because of that connection, I had entrusted all $20 billion of my assets to Trinity Bank. Not only as a client, but also as a seminar speaker, I had built a mutually beneficial relationship with the branch.
I never would have guessed that the branch manager's wife is a high school graduate.
Michael muttered in disbelief. Of course, the branch manager wouldn't go around sharing his wife's academic background with others, so it was understandable that no one knew. The other bank employees looked equally stunned.
So, what's your verdict? Is my wife a loser after all? And since I married her, does that make me a loser too?
The room's atmosphere dropped to absolute zero. The employees around us stayed silent, watching the exchange intently. It wasn't the kind of situation where anyone could laugh or chat. It felt like the air had turned heavy, like a funeral. Seeing the reactions around him, Michael's face turned ghostly pale.
I didn't mean to insult your wife, branch manager. Your wife is a homemaker, right? If she's not part of the workforce, she's still a winner, even if she's a high school graduate, isn't she?
Michael desperately tried to explain himself, but he was only making things worse. Wow. I couldn't help but cringe at his self-destructive remark. The branch manager's gaze remained cold and unmoving as he stared at Michael. There was no way Michael could recover from this.
I'm looking forward to the next personnel review.
The branch manager's words, hinting at a possible demotion, made Michael's face drain of all color.
No. My winning life.
Michael clutched his head and collapsed forward. He remained still with his hands and knees pressed to the floor. I looked down at him and said, "Academic background isn't everything. What matters is how much effort you put into your work after you graduate." Some people, like Emily and me, had circumstances that prevented them from pursuing higher education, even if they wanted to. What matters most is how you rise after you've fallen. Leaving Michael still frozen in place, I spoke. "I'll be heading out now. I'll follow up about the account closure later."
Understood. I sincerely apologize for everything. We will make sure Michael is properly held accountable.
The branch manager's firm words made me nod in approval. Then I walked out of the restaurant. After that incident, Michael was dismissed from Trinity Bank. It turned out later that he had many skeletons in his closet. The internal investigation revealed that, besides Emily, there were numerous other compliance violations by Michael due to his academic elitism. Michael's poor treatment wasn't limited to high school graduate employees. He was also harsh toward employees from lesser-known universities. he forced them to handle an overwhelming amount of work that kept them working late into the night without overtime pay. Moreover, even when the employees managed to complete the tasks through sheer effort, Michael's attitude was utterly appalling.
I don't waste my time reviewing work done by incompetents.
He would say this as he tore up the documents submitted by those employees. He was even worse because he would exaggerate his praise for documents prepared by employees from prestigious universities, even if their work was poorly done. He was also found to have given unfair performance evaluations to employees with lower academic backgrounds. As a result, many of them didn't receive fair salary increases. The internal investigation also revealed that Michael had planned to give Emily and others similarly low evaluations. No matter how capable someone was, Michael judged them solely based on their academic credentials. A person like that is unfit to be in a leadership position. Beyond the academic discrimination, several other violations came to light, leading to his dismissal. Following the incident, numerous complaints surfaced from Michael's former branch as well. The complaints all came from employees who had faced unjust treatment because of their educational background. Some employees, like me, had even left Trinity Bank altogether because of Michael. The loss of talented employees who could have thrived in the organization was a significant blow to the bank. In addition, Trinity Bank had to compensate employees who had been unfairly denied raises, which became a major undertaking. It was inevitable. They had to review performance evaluations going back several years. Because of this, Michael was forced to forego his severance pay. The internal investigation required extra staff, leading to additional labor costs. Because of this, the bank decided to offset Michael's severance package against the costs incurred and chose not to pursue legal damages against him. For Michael, losing his severance pay must have been devastating. After causing such a mess, it was unlikely he'd find another job anytime soon. It turned out that Michael had been married, but his wife left him and filed for divorce after the incident. Living with someone as prideful as Michael must have been unbearable for her. Moreover, Michael was unemployed and had no severance pay, leaving him completely without money. To someone like Michael, having no money likely meant having no worth. Michael, who had been so obsessed with being a winner, was now a loser in life. Even with his college degree, Michael had lost everything. He could no longer be considered a winner. But that was the life he chose for himself. I could only hope that he'd take this opportunity to reflect and grow from his mistakes. In the end, I decided not to close my $20 billion account and continued doing business with the first branch. The only issue at the first branch was Michael, and the other employees had done nothing wrong. Plus, the branch manager had desperately tried to convince me to stay, so I decided not to close my account and kept my assets there. However, I chose to step down from my role as a seminar speaker for Trinity Bank. Despite the branch manager's repeated attempts to persuade me otherwise, I couldn't forgive Michael's disparaging remarks about high school educated tax consultants. So, I gave up the seminar role and decided to spend that freed up time studying even more. And I gained a powerful ally. One day, as I was diligently working on a client's financial report for this month's tax filing, I heard a familiar voice.
Steve, let's take a break. You've also got a client appointment at 3 p.m.
Oh, I forgot. Thanks. I smiled and called out to Emily. Since then, Emily had left Trinity Bank and started working at my office as a tax consultant assistant. It seems seeing me in action inspired her to pursue a career as a professional. Now, she's learning while working by my side. I was surprised when she told me she'd resigned from Trinity Bank. But as always, Emily's attention to detail and support have been invaluable to me. I don't know what our future holds. However, I believe that the unpredictability of life is what makes it exciting. I'm still in my prime, and I plan to keep working hard so I won't be outdone by the next generation.